It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. Boy, I see a ton of folks out there on our live streaming site, and I'm glad to see you all this morning. Let's give a shout out to Concord, Fort Walton Beach, Ennis, Lincoln, I think that's Nebraska. Clarksville, not quite sure where that is. Chesterfield, Branson, Spokane, Washington. Well, good morning, all. If you're catching us on Big Country 99, the Rooster Radio Network, glad to have you on board with us this morning. We're going to cover a few different topics this today, and the last two segments are going to be in reference to Missouri issues. So. But these are imperatives that are across the board applicable to not just Missouri, but other places as well. So the first topic we want to talk about is the IRS, and the question as to whether or not they have become the new de facto secret police, or the investigative arm that goes out and is weaponized to be used against the American population. It's an easy one for the government to use the IRS in the wrong way, because it touches everyone. And no one can escape its long arm. Simply put, the IRS is perhaps one of the easiest agencies that the IRS can use, that the nation and the national government can use against the citizenry. Unlike the EPA, unlike the ATF, unlike the FBI, the IRS can reach into every home and to every individual. More just than the home. They can reach into your home and touch you, touch your husband, touch your wife, touch your children, or at least your adult children. And so they have an extraordinary level of interaction with every human being and every citizen. And so that is one of the reasons why they are the perfect vehicle to persecute the enemies of the state. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Our second topic is going to be kind of an unusual topic for us. There's a company out there called Atlas Survival Shelters, and if you're not familiar with them, I know the guy who's the owner of that, and we've been talking in reference to some kind of creative projects that might have some interest for some of you out there. As things degrade, there has been an enormous amount of interest in looking at some alternative means and methodologies to be able to a place to bug out, if you will. And I don't talk an enormous amount about the prepper issues for a couple of reasons, but my goal is, of course, to avoid the need to be a prepper in the first place, right? So, but I gotta point out the obvious. If there wasn't a need, then, and our government was operating in a form and a factor that was acceptable to the vast majority of us, why would we have so many people who are prepping? I mean, it's a logical question. The only reason people are prepping is because they see disaster coming. And we're not talking about, there's reasons to do it anyway for natural disasters and storms and things like that, but not on the level of long-term survival that a lot of folks are prepping for. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. One of the opportunities with Atlas is that they have one of the best units out there, but more importantly, there's some ideas that we're going to talk about where you can turn your farm into a kind of a prepper community and be able to do some kind of creative things where you can protect yourself and your family long term, create a scenario where you can have some friends and like-minded individuals and patriots with you, and at the same point in time, know that you've got a core group of individuals around you that you would be willing to work with in a sort of scenario like that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Our third topic is going to be the Ozark Scenic Riverways. And the problem at this point is that today is the last day for you to file your comments on the National Park Service changes to the rules. And so we're going to talk about it and the national environmental tyranny that's being promulgated by the National Park Service against the citizens in the state of Missouri. They're trying to change the rules unethically, illegally, immorally, and quite frankly, they have no business being here at all. And so, but if you're interested or you live in Missouri and you'd like to file your comments about their rule changes, and we're basically stating we don't want any change made, or at least that's the official position of AVN, then in that case, you should be filling out a comment section, and I've given links to you for that on our website at americasvoicenow.org, on our Facebook page, and on our Patriot FB page. So the upshot is we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then the last topic, again, which deals with Missouri, but shows an overall spread across the country, is Missouri gun rights. Now, for the record, there's a brand new program out there, or a brand new amendment out there to the state constitution that basically protects and expands the protection for the individual right to bear arms. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But we also need your witness forms. So if you're a state of Missouri representative or a citizen, then you should be filling out a witness form. This is a form which gets read into the official record of every piece of legislation. And that way, no one can deny that you took an interest in and commented about a specific piece of legislation. So your legislator can't, and the House and the Senate can't say, well, we didn't hear from anybody. It's not anecdotal anymore. It's actual empirical proof. So those are important issues. All right, let's break into our first topic because it's an important one. The other day, word came out that the IRS, some email was exposed, which essentially brought forth the issue that the IRS, not only was there a plan in place to create this conflict for conservative groups, but more importantly, it wasn't some isolated act by an individual, who was acting as a rogue agent and what have you. This was a series of proposed rules, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, which were done in secret, number one, with the intent that this would create a scenario where they could limit the free speech of the political opponents of the current regime in power. And there's no denying it at this point, folks. I mean, we can hear the president and his minions sit there and say these are all fantasy scandals, et cetera, et cetera. But we all know the truth. And so there's a couple of articles out there which I'll link in the body of the YouTube video. And basically what we have now at this point is that the IRS is being used as a weaponized arm of destruction for, or against, I should say, the nation. Now, the reason I say that is because, as I said in the preface to this particular segment, the real problem that we have is that with the IRS, they have reach into every home. No one can avoid their touch. When you look at other agencies, there's no other agency that has that level of invasiveness into every American's life. No one but the IRS. There's not another agency around. The EPA, well, they can only really work with you if you're a landowner, right? They can only abuse you if you're a landowner or a business or something along those lines. The ATF, they can only go after you over gun issues, and there's a lot of constitutional limitations on that even they have to adhere to, right? The FBI, and again, you need probable cause, and there's constitutional limitations and prohibitions against. Unlike the IRS. See, the IRS, nobody can avoid them. Nobody. And they need almost no probable cause to go after you because they can say, well, we're just doing it as a routine audit. Their name just popped up randomly. Now, it's almost impossible to disprove that because you have no access into the IRS's record databases, and everything is treated as a national secret. And so there's no way for you to be able to prohibit or block the IRS from being able to reach in and individually snatch you and hold you up for scrutiny or persecution or prosecution. When we look at the scenario of how they've been going after these conservative groups in light of this email that came out, we now see that as far back as a couple of years ago, Lois Lerner, the Treasury Department, and when we're talking about the Treasury Department now was working, sending emails back and forth with Lois Lerner, ladies and gentlemen, that's an entirely new wrinkle that's being incorporated into this scandal. And it leads us closer and closer and closer back to Pennsylvania Avenue and the White House. Because you can't tell me that this was a rogue agent in Cincinnati when the Treasury Department is conspiring, and I do mean the word conspiring in its criminal definition, with an IRS group and a series of individuals within the IRS to utilize the IRS as a weapon against conservative groups and free speech. The rulings that they're trying to do here and the rules that they were trying to impart were specifically intended to quiet political dissent against the Obama administration. And a perfect example of that is the True the Vote group. Now, this is a nonprofit group. Catherine Albrecht was the founder of True the Vote. And she's the one that you've probably seen on news reports where she, testified before Congress as to what they did to her. And it's interesting because she and her husband own a business, and I'm not quite sure what that business is, but it somehow has to do with firearms. Because the minute that this woman filed for this True the Vote 501c4, which is a non-religious, educational organization, she immediately began to receive contact from federal agencies, and a vast array of them. I mean, folks, in a 2-year period, she got 15 visits from 4 different federal agencies, including 2 tax audits, 2 visits from the ATF, visits from, all of these, and all of it was intended to intimidate and threaten her. In fact, she got a visit from OSHA. I watched her on an interview, which was very, very interesting. She got a visit from a representative of OSHA who came in to do, some review of her business. And when she questioned the guy, well, why are you here? You know what he said? I don't really know. I've just been told to come. The guy couldn't even explain why he was there. Now, OSHA doesn't just make routine visits like that. And she'd never had one before. You see, the truth of the matter is that they're utilizing the police power of the, and mighty it is, ladies and gentlemen, of the federal government to silence political dissent, to utilize, develop, and build an enemies list using information that they gather from what should be your private documents and information. When you file a tax return, that information, of course, has to be seen by humans. But it should be privileged information. Nobody should have access to that just because they happen to work for the IRS. And it certainly should never be pulled out to be looked upon as an opportunity to comb through and determine whether or not there's some way that they can use that information against you to prosecute or persecute you. I mean, if that is in fact the case, then Americans have every right to say, I refuse to file a tax document. I don't care whether I owe you money or not. I'm not filing one. And I'm not filing one because you're misusing those documents. Now, there are ramifications for that, of course. I can guarantee you that, if you try to use that as an excuse in court to explain when they go to audit you and prosecute you, hey, I refuse to do it because the IRS has been known to utilize these documents inappropriately, you're going to lose. But I am going to tell you that if enough Americans did it, we wouldn't lose. You see, the problem that we have here, folks, is that we're not acting in an organized fashion. And when, there is strength in numbers. I mean, you can look at nature and see the example of how that works, right? I mean, why do animals that are not predators herd together? Because there's strength in numbers. And why do animals that are predators hunt in packs? Because there is strength in numbers. The simple truth is, we're at a point in time in our political, historical life of our nation where we now can no longer believe that our national government is operating with our best interests at heart. We know that they have become vindictive, criminal, tyrannical, abusive, prosecutorial, persecution. I mean, these issues are not open for discussion anymore. They're plain for anyone and everyone to see. You don't have to look for them. They're apparent and evident. I have to tell you, it's very disheartening to me because I read so many stories and pieces of information every day, and it's sometimes it's difficult to drag myself away or from underneath the weight of that knowledge. And it's kind of funny. The other day, a friend and a listener sent me. She sent me a piece that just a sentence that she had read in a book, and it was timely because it's difficult sometimes to get through this stuff knowing what I know. And there are days when I just get very bummed out and depressed. I look at this stuff and it's like, wow. I mean, what chances really are there for us, right? And I look at the vast majority of America who apparently seems to be unwilling to stand up and fight for their own survival, and I do mean survival, not just in a physical sense, but in a political and an economic sense. And it's discouraging, frankly. And she sent me this little sentence that came out of a book that was by George, a letter from George Washington to a friend who he wrote this to. And it was encouraging, but in a unique way. When my hope is gone and my faith is tested, sometimes, I get an email from somebody or a contact from somebody, and it's just right, if you know what I mean. It's just the right time, the right place. So basically, here's what it says. On January 14th, 2 weeks into the new year, George Washington was feeling this way, and he wrote one of the most forlorn and despairing letters of his entire life. Here's what he wrote. Quote, "The reflection upon my situation and that of this army produces many an uneasy hour, when all around me are wrapped in sleep. Few people know the predicament we are in." And when I hear that and I read that, what it tells me is that the man who we look upon with such great respect and awe for his honor and his integrity, something we never see in any of our representatives today, that this guy, he lay awake at night tossing, knowing that his situation at times felt hopeless. And I think perhaps, and it certainly is for me, there are those who are all around me who are wrapped in sleep. And few people know the predicament that we are in. The important thing, then, what I took away from this was not that statement and its despair. What I took away from it was this: that regardless of how bad our situation may seem, with hindsight, and we look back and we realize how dire things may be. But regardless of how bad that situation may seem, if we move forward collectively with courage, with strength and determination that we know, and the courage of our convictions, that we know we are right, and with our honor and our integrity and our intentions righteously intact, that we can take heart and have faith in the knowledge that when all seems to be the darkest, comes the dawn. America, I believe in you. And I believe in this nation, and I believe in each one of you that are listening to this. I believe that we collectively have the right spirit and the right heart and the right motivations, the right intentions, the right faith. And I believe that we can save our nation. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I truly believe that there are a collective group of patriots who truly recognize, remember, understand, and know what this really should be, not what it is. When my hope is gone and my faith is sorely tested, I can look back on a guy like Washington and say, aha, I'm not alone. And in the end, because he had faith, because he had courage, because he knew his way and he had the courage of his convictions, he was successful. And he did the impossible. He did the impossible. He saved a nation with a minority of people who were determined to do the right thing, with a small group who, beyond all hope, frankly, were able to do the impossible. With divine guidance and intervention, with that guidance that the enemy does not have. I would encourage you to take a look today at yourself. And I would encourage you to go quietly and maybe just go sit somewhere, take a walk, shut off all the outside noise, and put some thought into having a discussion with yourself about where you really need to be. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to say and do to preserve this nation? Because if we won't fight when we are in the right, when we can easily win without bloodshed, if we won't fight when our victory is sure and not too costly, we may get to the moment when we have to fight with all of the odds against us and only a precarious chance of survival. Things may even get worse. We may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than live as a slave. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to America's Voice Now. All right. We're back. Thanks for riding with us this morning. Sorry to end that note on a such solemnity. You know, I really truly believe in this country. And I believe in what we have, that we have an obligation to pass that on to those who are, coming after us, whether they're ours or yours or maybe those we don't even know. And I foresee some real trouble coming down the road, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think this is going to be easy. I don't think we are going to have a pleasant time of this. I'm very deeply concerned. And part of that is because I look around us and, to be honest with you, it's a scenario, I think, where our national survival is at stake. And I can't ignore that. I can't pretend that it's not happening. And I have a friend of mine who runs a place called Atlas Survival Shelters, and they build these steel corrugated tubes. There's some links up on our website and Facebook about it. I've looked at a lot of these different types of facilities, and Ron Hubbard builds one of the best ones I've seen. He's actually been featured on Doomsday Preppers, and he's working for a brand new program I think it's in the spring, with a couple of different television programs to create a reality show that would be about a prepper community and how they develop and build. Not an idiotic one where they're running around getting drunk and doing stupid idiotic stuff and taunting a bull in a field or something after drinking an 8-pack. And at least I know Ron, and I don't think that would be his speed at all. But the cool part about this is Ron and I were talking about this over the course of a couple of conversations in the last, couple of weeks. And there's an idea that we've kind of tossed around, and I'd like your input on it. And that is, it's when you look at this type of scenario, I hear a lot of people say, well, I've got a place where I can go in the event that there's a crisis or what have you. And there's more to it, though, than that, because no man is an island, right? You can't do this on your own. You can't, you and your family alone are not enough. You have to be in a community of like-minded people. You have to have external support and internal support. And one of the things that we talked about was the idea of having a community of individuals that would have self-contained living arrangements, but in addition to that, be able to, deal with the idea of sharing the workload, right, as it were, and or security and all the rest of it. And he's kind of got laid a plan out where he's got these communities that they're putting together where they take a single piece of property and groups of individuals would, these units that he builds are intended to be buried. They don't have to be, but his are intended to be buried. And they're made out of a corrugated steel pipe that is, about 10 or 12 feet high. And basically it's a long pipe with steps on either end of it, an ingress and egress area. And it's got an air filtration and, the whole 9 yards, battery systems in there, et cetera, et cetera. The idea is that when you've got, 6 or 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 or 40 of these things clustered onto one property, and you have a group of like-minded people who are all kind of cooperating in the, in the sense that you've got different people with different skill sets and different talents, right? Then you have a community that could make it in a crisis, whether that's long-term or short-term. I mean, even this could take the form of anything. It could become a natural disaster. It could become a man-made disaster. It could become an economic collapse. It could be anything. And when we talk about that, the question is, well, how long would one last? I don't know. But, the issue of how to protect and defend yourself and your family and be able to, not be in a place where, if you think about it, if there were a health crisis, an epidemic of a flu, let's say, in a city, I was reading an article the other day about an or a new version of that bird flu. And they were saying that it's actually jumped from birds. It's a brand new strain and it's killing people in China or something like that. And, some kind of a flu or something along those lines, some kind of a pandemic that were to hit a city would wipe a place like that out. Or, the crisis, even if it didn't, the panic that would ensue in a highly populated urban area would be perhaps even more dangerous than the actual bug itself, right? In an economic scenario where the collapse of the financial system, which I believe is imminent, would occur, I mean, that's going to be some tough times, folks. And cities are not places you want to be. The idea of these shelter communities is that you have bulk of them. And so here's my point. And before we go much further, I'd like you to give me your feedback and your input on it. I'd like to know if this is something you personally would be interested in. Now, these are not inexpensive. These particular types of shelters, they start at about $40,000 and they go on up from there. It's like buying a house. And the way that this would work is that you would have this piece of property so I want you to email me if this is something you're interested in. I'm actually going to write a whole thing up and put it up on AVN about it. But if this is something that you think you'd be interested in, regardless of where you are in the country, I'd like to hear from you. You can send me email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. And we can open up a dialogue where we can do it in like a Google shared environment, or we can do it in a conference bridge if there's a bunch of you. So you can email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. I have some friends who have large plots of land, in the 200, 400, 600, 800 acre blocks. And you could do this with as little as, 40 or 60 or 80 acres if you had a core group of 3 or 5 people that were families that wanted to do this. And essentially, whether you bury these Atlas survival shelters, which I think is probably the premier way to go, or you did some other solution, you're sharing the workload, you're sharing the risk, you're sharing the security issues that would be surrounding that. And to me, it makes sense because, even if you have a cabin in the woods somewhere that you and your family would ordinarily retreat to, that you got a weekend place that you would ordinarily think, well, we'll go there. The problem, of course, is that as an isolated group in there, no man is an island. And, you're trying to take care of, feeding yourselves and whatever is necessary, plus providing yourselves with security and the rest of that may not be as easy as you think. In the event of an EMP or something like that, we could be years. So the upshot is there are some folks that are serious about issues like this, and I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear your opinions about this idea of a community and whether or not you'd be interested in one. Because I've got a few friends that have got some rather large tracts of land, and we're considering putting a couple of these together. What do you think of that idea? Would you be interested in some kind of a collected program where you've got more than, 1 or 2 individual families in one geographic area? And the property would, be a collective in the sense that, everyone would share. I mean, and the reason for that is simple. The guy who's good at mechanics is not good at growing tomatoes, and the guy who's good at tomatoes may not be good at trying to repair an electrical system, and the guy who's good at repairing the electrical system may not be good at trying to fix a plumbing problem, and the guy who's good at fixing the plumbing problem, may well not be good at the defensive aspects of trying to, protect and defend an isolated zone. Think about that for a minute. The skills and the talents of multiple people is beneficial to all. And, I'm not a collectivist by any stretch of the imagination, because when you look at, concepts like communism and socialism and all the rest of that, they only work in very, very small, isolated pockets. And even these, a community like this, you wouldn't have that. You would have, a clear, defined, leader and elected by the group itself, and so forth and so on. The idea is one that I think has merit, and as we look forward into our timeline and history and what's happening in our country, it's becoming more and more and more apparent to me that the old style idea of I might go and wait this out in the woods for the 3 or 4 weeks that it occurs, as in my own family cabin, may not necessarily work for us. I'm not saying that, in the event that there were a weather issue, that you couldn't do that for a short term. But when you're talking about a longer term issue, that's problematic. I've been reading a book by Fortune, Forchen, I think, or Forchen. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his name. And it's called 1 Second After. And he talks about the article. The book was actually written a couple of years back. And the preface in there was by what the heck is his name? The guy who Newt Gingrich. And it's about an EMP where, some rogue nation throws an EMP 200 miles above the atmosphere. It explodes up there. It's a nuclear weapon, but it's designed to create an electrical magnetic pulse that, wipes out electronics. And our grid is vulnerable from terrorist attacks. I mean, it doesn't have to be something like that. It could be somebody who puts a virus into our grid and shuts it down. The grid system that we have in the United States has been vulnerable for a long time. And it's well known, not only by us, but by our enemies. And so we have to, keep those things in consideration. The principle of this book is that, if you were to have an EMP like that, it could last years because the systems and the equipment that would be necessary to repair it, first of all, are no longer produced and manufactured in our country, which is a problem right off the bat. Secondarily, even if you could get them built in a foreign country, you'd have to get them from there to here, and then from wherever they landed at a shore somewhere to wherever they were needed, maybe somewhere in the Midwest. And how do you move something that's the size of the Empire State Building when you don't have electricity? I mean, to be honest, folks, it's pretty serious and dire circumstance. And this book by Fortune was actually given to every member of Congress so that they could review it and begin to take corrective action about the vulnerability of our grid. Apparently it didn't work because it's still just as vulnerable as it always was. And like everything else Congress does, ineptitude and cronyism and all the rest of that and politics got in the way of actually protecting the American people. Golly, gee, what a concept, right? So anyhow, Ron Hubbard, the owner of Atlas Survival Shelters, and I have been talking. And I've been talking with a couple of folks that I know have some larger tracks. And, obviously you don't want these in a city somewhere. And anyway, the upshot is if this is something you'd be interested in, I'd like to hear from you. Because I believe that there is an opportunity for a group of foresighted individuals to work and band together to build a community that would be... And, this doesn't have to be some kind of hardcore thing like everybody's running around in gas masks or something. That's not what I think at all. But I do believe that there are going to be times in our future where this would be advantageous. Being underground, by the way, in an Atlas shelter has some advantages. One, just in heating issues, right? Once you're 20 feet underground or so, the Earth maintains a fairly consistent about 55 degrees. So cooling is not a problem, and heating means you don't have to bring it up from below zero, which you would above ground in terribly cold weather. So there's some advantages to that. And as Ron, has been on this Doomsday Preppers thing, he gets a lot of feedback from that, and he sells quite a few of these things. I mean, they're huge. It's a 10-foot pipe, right? So think about the height of the ceiling in your home. Think about a 10-foot piece of corrugated steel pipe, and he builds it uniquely in the sense that there's on either end there's kind of like a room where you can seal it off, and then another pipe that goes up to the surface where there's a ladder that gets up there. And they have an air handling system that's NBC qualified and all the rest of that stuff. Anyway, I think these are interesting ideas. And I believe that there's an opportunity for us to perhaps work together on it and determine whether or not this is in the best interest of you and your family. So you can send me or questions about it to mike@americasvoicenow.org. Just put in there Prepper Community in the subject line, and I'll know what it is, and I'll build a special file for that so that we can begin to communally discuss it. Just put Prepper Community in the subject line, and I'll get back to you, as quickly as I can. I will respond to each one. I promise you that. I get a lot of email, folks, and it's hard for me sometimes to get to every single one. Sometimes I've had people who send me, one or two emails, and then they get, they'll send me one. Hey, I haven't heard back from you. Well, with all due respect, I get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails every day, and that's just the radio stuff. I've still got a business that I have to run, so it's not as easy as it sounds. And don't get mad at me if I don't respond to every email you send. You're not the only person that's contacting me. So you're welcome to visit the Atlas Survival Shelters Facebook page, as well as America's Voice Now, and the Atlas website. So their Facebook page is facebook.com/Atlas Survival Shelters. And then their website itself is atlassurvivalshelters.com. And if you do, or if you call Ron or you speak to him, please do yourself and me a favor and make sure that you mention that you heard about it on America's Voice Now and we're talking about it, and that you're interested in talking about the idea of this. Now, if you have a large piece of land and you are somewhere else, there's a lot of folks that listen all over the country here. If this is something you think you might be interested in, discussing with us, and you've got a piece of land that might be well suited for this, then I certainly want to hear from you as well. If you're in, one of the nice parts about this is that you could take a piece of property that might be, let's say, 100 acres, right? And if you were to put 20 of these units in, and you figure 4 people on average in a family, so you got 20 units times 4 people, you can actually end up doing fairly well in terms of, the way I would look at this is you don't actually sell the property because, that might be problematic in the sense that, there's some legal implications and all the rest of that. But I can discuss in greater detail with you how that would work. But basically, these shelters are intended to be, collectively grouped. And whether you're doing it as a resort and a weekend retreat type thing, or whether you're doing it more along the lines of, a survival shelter or or whatever, there are a lot of videos, a lot of pictures on there. In fact, I just discussed with Ron the other day about replacing and rebuilding his website for him. As many of you know, I have a web development company, and we're going to rebuild his website. And so we're going to go and probably do that over the course of the next month or so. And but you're certainly welcome to go visit what he has now and bring yourself up to speed on what the capabilities are. It's atlassurvivalshelters.com. And there's links on our Facebook page and AVN and Patriot FB as well. So please feel free to communicate with Ron directly if you'd like, or you can kind of work it through by contacting me. I want to definitely hear about more about your interest and your ideas on this. If you have a piece of land that you think is suitable, then by all means give me a call, and I can explain to you how you might turn that piece of property into a profitable enterprise to be able to put one of these communities in. It's a great idea, folks. And if you've got a farm and you've got some fallow property on one end of it, hey, it might be a great chance for you to work with us. Okay. I'm going to take a minute and just talk about our sponsors really quickly. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Ozark Scenic Riverways and the environmental tyranny that is being shoved down our throats by the National Park Service there. Today is the last day for you to put public comment in on the website for the NPS. And if you're not familiar with this and you're not aware of it, the National Park Service has been trying to change the rules and limit access to these parks, or this park, which is called the Ozark Scenic Riverways. It encompasses Jack's Fork River and the Current River and some other areas. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it when we get to that segment. It'll be right after the break. But if you live in Missouri, we need your comments, and we need your comments finalized today. And then the second one that we're going to talk about in our fourth and final segment is Missouri's gun laws. There is a brand new amendment to the state constitution. And even if you're not in Missouri, I want you to make sure that you capture this particular episode, because you should be talking about doing this within your own state constitution. It's a way for you to push the federal government out of your state's business regarding gun laws. So, all right, make sure that you visit our friends and our sponsors. Mini Mart Express 1 and Mini Mart Express 2 in West Plains have recently come on board with us. They're a nice group of folks. They have 2 different facilities and locations here. They're exactly what they sound like, Mini Mart Expresses. You can go in there and get all kinds of things. They've got great fountain drinks, the cheapest fountain drinks I've ever seen. They start at 39 cents, and it's already the size of 2 cans of soda. And they go on up from there. But, I mean, you can get like one of these monster fountain drinks, and they're very, very inexpensive. Lottery, they've got lottery, of course, over there, and snacks and chips and hot food and, you know, all the normal stuff that you would expect there. Their facility in the north, which is on the corner of 14 and 63, has a ice-cold beer cave, and then they also carry wine coolers and liquor and stuff like that. They have that vaporizer liquid for the e-cigarettes. They carry the e-cigarettes, and they've got a very good special on that. They offer 100% guaranteed prices, and the cool part is when you go out of that one on 14 and 63, there's no city tax, so save you a little bit of money. The other facility they have, their southern facility, is right across the street from the pool in the center of West Plains, and that's called People's Park, where the city pool is, right across the street, and that's called Express Mini Mart 1. So swing in there, and when you do, make sure that you say to whoever's behind the counter, hey, I came over here because I heard about you on America's Voice Now. Make sure that you see our friends over at the battery station. Kevin is a dear friend of mine and an outstanding patriot, has probably one of the best stores I've been to, and I've been to a lot of cool stores, folks, and a lot of cool places with, you know, electronics and survival gear and military surplus and things like that. But battery station kicks butt. Make sure that you get a chance to get in there. They're in Washington Avenue in West Plains. That's just before you get to the square. You can also call them if you need directions or more information at 417-257-7799. And then you can also visit their website, which doesn't have a lot of the survival products online, but you can still get more information there by going to batterystation.com. You can also order batteries and flashlights and stuff that they have online directly on the internet. Make sure that while you're in town, you swing by the Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they have $5 days, which basically means lunch is $5. They've got a buffet salad bar and a pizza and pasta bar. And I swing in there from time to time, and I think it's a great place to go and have lunch. You might even bump into me there one day. And they also, on Tuesday nights, have Kids Eat Free, which is family night. So please make sure that you patronize those folks. They have stepped out of their way to make sure that they're supporting AVN because they believe in our message and in our mission. While you're there, make sure you go over to Bruce and you just tell him, hey, I heard about you from AVN and Mike on the air, and I wanted to thank you for supporting them. Jason Henry is a lawyer in town, and I encourage you to go visit him if you have a legal need to do so. He handles federal and state criminal and civil cases, and he specializes in things like local stuff like DUIs and stuff like that, but also criminal cases related to firearms, especially federal and state drug cases, things like that. He also does family law, so if you're going through a divorce or you've got custody issues or any of that, give him a call. He's at number 10 Court Square, right across from the courthouse in West Plains, 417-256-4100. It's 417-256-4100. And then while you're there, you can swing into Wits End Classic Barbershop and get yourself a haircut, which I did yesterday. Jason cut my hair. And while you're over at Wits End Classic Barbershop, make sure that you talked with those folks. And by the way, I've got an updated number for you on them, and it is 417-372-2027. That's 417-372-2027 if you'd like to call Wits End Classic Barbershop. While you're at it, make sure that you swing in there and you see the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop right in the back of the barbershop. Beautiful facility, large screen TVs, a great place if you want to have a sports event or maybe a bachelor party. Get in there and you can have a cigar, a pipe, you can have a couple of guys, and you can bring, you know, if you wanted to have a bachelor party, you could bring some beer or wine or whatever the case may be. And you can reach them by calling 417-257-1776. 417-257-1776. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
All right. We are returning. Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. I'm glad to have you on board with us this morning. Thanks for joining us. If you're catching us live on our website, I see New York out there. I see Ennis. I see Spokane again. I see, Chicago. I see, looks like Milwaukee or right outside Milwaukee. I see Texas down there. I think that's two Texas because I think Ennis is Texas as well. I see the Southwest. New York, Baltimore is down there. Washington, D.C., you're probably somebody in the government watching and listening, right? You do your duty and start acting like an American instead of like some kind of a monster tyrant. If you are in the federal government or the state government, or you are in law enforcement, or you are in some level of governmental service, it's time that you started doing your duty. Uphold the Constitution you've taken an oath and sworn to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and, here's your emphasis, domestic. Okay, we're going to cover two different topics in the last half of the show. We are in the last segment, or the last two segments, I apologize. We're hit the halfway mark. It's a few minutes short of 9 a.m., and we are going to talk about the Ozark Scenic National Riverways and the imposition of environmental tyranny on the citizens of the state of Missouri. And this is representative, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, across the country. You know, we fought the Blue Ways quite successfully, I might add, going back, a year or so ago. When AVN and when I heard about the Blue Ways, and by the way, I'm not taking credit here that I'm not entitled to. There were a lot of other folks that were involved in the Blue Ways events. But there were, Secure Arkansas was involved in it. The property rights coalitions were involved in it. Doreen Hannes and the Truth Farmer website were involved in it. Bob Parker was involved. I mean, there were just a ton of us. Mike Slack and the group down in Mammoth and Mammoth Springs, and the Property Rights Coalition out in the Mountain View area. Let me tell you what the Blue Ways was. The federal government came in here and decided that they were going to take over the whole White River Basin, which was basically the bottom about 1/5 of Missouri and the northern about 1/4 of Arkansas. It's 18 million acres, folks. And they were going to come in here and apply rules and regulations through the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers and all of these environmental groups like the Nature Conservancy and the Audubon Group and all of this nonsense, who were what they called stakeholders. Of course, people who'd never been here, right? And their goal was to basically flush us all out of there and empty the area of all human habitation so that they could turn it into pristine wilderness. These are from a bunch of people that if they ever found a tick walking up their leg, they'd have a kitten. But the truth of the matter is, we stepped up as a collective group. We got on and guys, we beat this thing in like 6 weeks. There was such an uprising from the local citizenry and community, the federal government was stunned. This was a Department of the Interior project, but it was conjoined with all the state conservation departments of Missouri and Arkansas. They were working in cooperation with all these NGOs, like, again, the Nature Conservancy, the Audubon Group, the Sierra Club, and all of these environmental tyrants. Environmental terrorists is what they are, folks. And anyway, we went and got resolutions put together, which every county commissioner signed. We had 23 counties that were involved in it here in the state of Missouri, and out of that, 19 of them signed it. There was only one or two that didn't sign it, that wouldn't sign it. The others would have signed it, but finally the Department of Interior withdrew the program, and then there was no point in them signing it. There was one, Greene County in Springfield, that refused to sign it. Shame on you, Greene County. We beat it anyway. And ladies and gentlemen, the flea on the elephant's rear end finally got the elephant to move. And we actually stopped the elephant. And now we've got a scenario that's similar with the Ozark Scenic Riverways. The National Park Service has come in here, and let me just give you a little bit of quick history. Essentially, in the 60s, I think it was 1964, the national government came to Missouri and said, if you don't, you've got two choices here regarding these beautiful rivers, these pristine rivers called the Jack's Fork and the Current. One of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to give the property to us, the federal government, and we're going to turn it into a national park to preserve it, or we're going to get the Army Corps of Engineers to declare that they're going to flood it and turn it into a dam. Can you believe that? Well, ultimately, the state capitulated and turned the property over to the federal government, and they've been in control of it ever since. And over time, they have become more and more and more draconian about limiting access to it. They have turned these areas into wilderness zones that they don't maintain at all. They've shut off roads. They've prohibited access here. They pay their people. I mean, the people who are running this thing make 5 and 6 times the average income of the people who live here. So, for the record, the average income in that county is about $25,000, and the guy who runs this thing for them, who lives locally, makes $140 grand or $150 grand a year, and he supervises a bunch of people who all make $125, who supervise a bunch of other people that all make $110. I mean, it's ridiculous. They terrorize the locals while allowing people from outside the area to come down here, and the people come from St. Louis and Kansas City for the weekend and stuff like that. And they get drunk on the river, and they leave their beer cans floating down the river, and it's a mess. And they say we don't maintain our river, which is why they took it away from us, right? Well, we've had enough of that nonsense. And so the latest change, they've been trying to put in place what's called a 20-year plan. And interestingly enough, they've been working on it for the last 8 years. Well, part of the 20-year plan incorporates, and there's some good information that you can find about it by going to, you can go to the NPS's website, but for argument's sake, there are a number of different websites that you can go to. And one of the best out there that gives it really succinctly is Voice of the Ozarks. That is Jerry King, and let's see, Voice of the Ozarks. Jerry King is a friend of mine. It's voiceoftheozarks.org. And Jerry has been pretty instrumental, .com perhaps, I apologize, has been very instrumental in fighting back against this. And so he's got, let's see, maybe I'm wrong, VOT Ozarks, right? .org. Come on now, Michael. Sorry, I'm doing this live. I should have had this already. Okay, so here's the deal. VOT Ozarks.org. VOT, like voice of the. VOT Ozarks.org. So they want to eliminate 65 miles of horse trails adjacent to the river. 65 miles of them. They want to eliminate unauthorized river crossings. I mean, who are these people to determine what's authorized and not authorized? And why do we have to beg them for permission to cross a river in our backyard? They want to require permits for horseback riding. They want to eliminate motor vehicle access to the gravel bars. And they want to eliminate all ATV, UTV, and four-wheeler use within the national park area. They want to eliminate outboard motors in some areas and then reduce the boat motor size and horsepower in other areas. What it really comes down to is this is the steely fist of tyranny of the National Park Service coming in here to just smack us around and beat us up. For what? To limit access to a river that's in our backyard. So we've actually gone on the offensive, folks. There have been a bunch of community meetings. There was about 4 of them, actually, at this point. And by the way, the people who are working with the National Park Service are, again, the same dag-nabbed suspects. The Sierra Club and these nature conservancy groups and those same people. These environmental tyrants who swing money around. I don't know where they get their funding, but they've got unlimited resources. It's amazing to me how these environmental groups have so much money. I'm assuming that they're funded by these liberals like Soros and that kind of thing, but and international groups, including the United Nations and all of those organizations. But their goal here is to turn this into, again, pristine wilderness where human beings are really not allowed to go. The problem with that is that this is in our backyard, folks, and these people, it's already bad enough that they stole the land through eminent domain from the people that they took it from between the 60s and the 90s when they finally took all the property away from everyone in private ownership and kicked them off their land. They gave them some pittance and sent them flying. So interestingly enough, we demanded that they hold some public hearings about this, and it grew from one here and one up in St. Louis to 4 here and 1 in St. Louis. Well, interestingly enough, and by the way, you got to wonder, why are they holding a meeting in Kirkwood, which is right outside of St. Louis, for a river that's down here? I'll tell you why. Because that's exactly where the Sierra Club is headquartered. Isn't that interesting? Where they could get all of their support to show up. And hundreds of them did at that Kirkwood meeting. But at every other meeting, and there was a meeting in Van Buren, there was a meeting in Powder Valley Conservation, that was the one in Kirkwood. There was one in Eminence, which is another place where the rivers are. Anyway, and one in Van Buren. Every one of these meetings, the first one, 400 people showed up. Everybody was against it, other than maybe 1 or 2 isolated individuals. The next meeting, 300 people showed up. The next meeting, 400 people showed up again. And then up in the one in Kirkwood, I'm not even sure how many hundreds showed up, but a lot. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people from this area drove all the way up to Kirkwood to fight it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the same crowd that was fighting to preserve this area from the blueways. A lot of the same people. And all of the same voices out there warring against it. Folks like Doreen Hannes from Truth Farmer. By the way, go to truthfarmer.com. What an outstanding website. Folks like Voice of the Ozarks and the Property Rights Coalitions. All of these groups, AVN, myself, we were all fighting against this thing. And now we're at the close of this. We've got our state representatives fighting on it on our side. We've got even our federal representative now, Jason Smith, who's the federal state representative, the federal representative for this district, fighting on behalf of the citizenry here. And we've actually gone and taken this thing and turned the tactic around. Instead of sitting there and trying to fight these people in a defensive mode, we've actually turned it around and said, you know what? How about this? Why don't we just do this? Give us back our land, and you can take all of your nonsense, and you can go back to Washington, D.C. with it, because we really don't want you here. And you can take your high-priced $125,000 a year Ranger and get lost. They charge us fees to do everything. They, constantly whack you with tickets. I mean, and the truth of the matter is, this particular area in these rivers support an enormous amount of economic activity in the community that they're in. And, when the government comes in and says we're going to eliminate these horse trails, well, for the record, I've got some friends who own cross-country trail rides, which is, cross-country trail rides is, and I built their website, by the way. Go to crosscountrytrailrides.com. Little shameless plug for those folks. They have a facility there where it's like bring your own horse. And they get anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 people that will come to these 8 events they hold a year, where these families will come down and they'll have 2 and 3 and 4 horses with them. And they camp there and they, go horseback riding in these vast wilderness areas we have. And while they're here, they're spending a lot of money, folks. And these guys want to eliminate 65 miles of horse trails. And they want to eliminate unauthorized river crossings, not only by humans, but by horses. So we need your input. And I've given you links on our Facebook page, on our website, and so forth, where you can go in and put in public comment and say, essentially, that we want no changes. Now, they have 4 options from the National Park Service about what these changes can be. And each one, the first is no change. Then option 1, option 2, option 3. Option 1, has some limitations. Option 2 has more draconian limitations. And option 3 is like so over the top, it's like Nazi Germany. I know, I'll get some nasty email about that. How can you say it's like Nazi Germany? Well, not for nothing, but I'm tired of being tyrannized, and I'm tired of being terrorized by government. Get out of here. Just take your stuff and get out. We don't want you here. It's our river. It's our yard. It's our property, not yours. Just get lost. We own it. No, you own it because you stole it from us at the point of a gun. And we're not happy about it. And if I have anything to say about it, we're going to get it back. We are going to get that property back. All of it. And it's going to go and belong to the state of Missouri, not to the National Park Service. But under these 4 options, the one that we are pushing for is leave the existing rules in place and make no changes. And here's why. If they make no changes, between now and the time that we actually get this property back, we don't have to deal with any more draconian changes and rule implementations. And this way, when we get it back, we don't have to undo a bunch of other stuff. And I'm telling you, folks, our federal House representative is for this. Our state representatives in each of the areas that are represented by these rivers in this area are for getting the property back. Our state senators are for it. Mike Cunningham and his I just drew a blank. I can't think of it. Doug Leibler. It's right on the tip of my tongue. These guys are all for the federal government giving this property back to us, putting it back in the possession of the Missouri State Conservation Department, and we'll maintain our own river. We don't need the federal government here. We have so many national parks around here, these massive Mark Twain national parks. Some of them are tens of thousands of acres. We have wilderness areas here that are just huge. So the upshot is, we want the property back, and we want your help if you live in Missouri. And I don't care if you don't live right here. If they can get people all the way from St. Louis, 3.5 hours north of here, who can comment on this, then I don't care if you live in Kansas City or you live up near the Iowa border. Comment. So go follow the link so that you can go in there and put your comment in. And your comment should be, leave the existing rules in place and make no changes. And whatever reasoning you want to put behind that, that's fine. But we want to take action on it, and we want to take action today. And today's the last day that you can file your comments. So please do this. Let's show the federal government it's not their place to dictate to us what the rules are in our state. Remember, there's this little thing called the 10th Amendment. Yeah, I know. The federal government doesn't acknowledge it. But we need to. So, go to the website. It's park planning. Well, hold on a second. I'll actually link to it because that way I can give you the website, especially if you don't have any other time to deal with this. Okay, so oh my goodness, it's this terribly long address. Goodness gracious. Well, I'm not going to read it to you. It's parkplanning.nps.gov, and the first one that you come to is the actual location where you can you got to click on the link. They almost like hide it, so it's impossible for you to really get to be able to deal with the thing and put your comments in. I'm so sick and tired of the abuse and the nonsense from these people. I could just scream. I went to one of the. You know how desperate they are to get to push this plan through that they've been working on for 8 years. That God only knows how many untold millions of dollars of taxpayer money. They printed up a 535-page book that's so full of shadow and gray that they can interpret these rules any way they want from now until eternity. What really bothers me is we invited these people down to actually attend some of our property rights coalition meetings. Like Mike Slack invited these guys, and they said they couldn't afford the gas because they were under sequester. Well, guess what? During the meeting I went to, they actually flew 5 guys in from Colorado, and I think the other place was Utah or North Dakota or something. So they can't afford gas to send the representative down to attend a meeting to hear from the citizenry, but they can afford to fly 5 guys in, right? What a sham. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why the federal government needs to be pushed back into its rabbit hole, so that we don't. The only time we ever have access and contact with it is when we go to look for it, not the other way around. All right, we're going to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Missouri gun laws and the Show Me way, because there's a brand new Second Amendment change that's going to be applied to our, or amendment change that's going to be made to our state constitution. And each of you should be paying attention to what we're doing here in Missouri regarding the Second Amendment Preservation Act and this issue regarding this amendment. Okay, make sure that you visit our sponsors over at Battery Station in West Plains, 417-257-7799, and you can find them on the web by going to batterystation.com. Our friends over at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard, where you can get yourself a great lunch every day. And on Tuesday nights, kids eat free under 12. They're on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains. You can also order pizza, and they'll deliver, although you got to be local. So if you're calling, from Spokane or Washington or New York, they're not going to deliver. Call Jason Henry over at the law offices of Jason Henry. You can reach him at 417-256-4100. He's on the square in West Plains. State and federal criminal and civil issues. Make sure that you contact him. Specializes in gun cases, by the way. 417-372-2027 is the phone number for Wits End Classic Barbershop. Although you don't need an appointment, go in there, and for $10 you'll get the best doggone haircut you've ever had. He also does this old-style straight razor, hot shave with lather and a wet towel and all of that stuff. So if you want to really treat your husband or your boyfriend or your significant other or just your mom or your your dad, your mom. Mom, I'm taking you in for a shave. I'm sorry. If you want to treat your male significant other, friend, or family member to a great thing, go in there and go to Wits End Classic Barbershop and get him a hot lather shave with a straight razor. While you're there, you can slip into the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop in the back, and there can be reached at 417-257-1776. And last but certainly not least, our friends over at Mini Mart Express 1 and Mini Mart Express 2 in West Plains. One on the corner of 14 and 63, an Old Granny's Cafe building, where you can find great services and products over there, including an ice-cold beer cave that's monstrous. And they have the lowest prices on cigarettes and tobacco products that you're going to find in, like cartons and things like that. They also have the cheapest fountain drinks you'll find at 39 cents and up in both locations. The northern location there on 14 and 63 corner, that particular facility is the only one that sells alcohol. The other one is right across the street from the pool in West Plains, right on People's Park. And make sure that you see those folks. It's called Mini Mart Express 1 and Mini Mart Express 2. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a minute, and we're going to talk about guns. Yeah, guns. You know why you need guns? Jefferson told us it's because our government operates in tyranny when we fear them. We'll be right back. I love this microphone. No, not because I like the sound of my own voice. Because a really cool guy named Imre called me up one day. He sent me an email. He said, hey, I got a great microphone that would be awesome for you because you got that barrely baritone voice, right? And basso profundo is what they call it. So anyway, Imre says, you want this microphone? You want to, I'll lend it to you. And I was like, heck yeah. So he shipped it out to me, and it is an awesome microphone. It's made by a company called Neumann, and it's a very, very high-end professional microphone. And I got to tell you, it is the cat's meow, baby. And so thank you, Imre. You're a good man and a patriot. I appreciate you. Okay. And that's not to denigrate anybody else who helps us with either equipment or funding or time or effort or whatever. I love all you guys. Thank you so much. So here's where we are on this issue of state issues for Missouri. By the way, for the record, there's been 2 articles of impeachment which have been filed against Governor Nixon. Yay! I want to hear the clapping as the crowd roars. Our governor is a piece of garbage. He is a Democrat. He's instituted a lot of things in this state which are unethical, illegal, immoral, and unconstitutional. Not the least of which is, he's the guy who was involved in the scandal where they released the names of 167,000 concealed carry holders, and they gave them to the federal government, the ATF, and the Social Security Administration for investigation. Yeah, it was called a fishing expedition, right? Yeah, our governor was responsible for that. He also vetoed the Second Amendment Preservation Act we passed last year. He also has instituted Common Core, first and foremost without going to Congress and getting approval to do that, or state assembly, I should say. And secondarily, spending taxpayers' money to accomplish it. He has refused to allow tax breaks that would return money back to the citizens of the state of Missouri. And Governor J. Jeremiah Nixon is a piece of garbage. Well, guess what? 2 articles of impeachment have been filed against him. Hooray! Thank goodness, it's about time. Congratulations to our state representative who actually filed these, because it's about time that we had somebody willing to step up to the plate. Nick Marshall has filed these 2 articles, but in addition to that, I know that Mike Moon has been working on this too. They're filing these articles of impeachment against him over 2 issues. One, he's allowing same-sex joint tax return filings. Now, I don't care where you stand on the issue of same-sex marriage, but here's the deal. The state of Missouri, by a 72% margin, voted a constitutional amendment change that defined marriage as between a man and a woman. And they did this in 2004. So by allowing same-sex marriage couples to file with the file tax returns this way, he's violating the Missouri Constitution. And this guy is as bad as Obama. In fact, he's following Obama's leads with all these executive orders. This is the same governor who a couple of weeks ago signed an executive order authorizing the National Guard to be used for drug law enforcement activity in various cities around the state. I mean, this guy is like Obama Mini-Me. Yeah, you remember Mini-Me, that little guy from that Michael, what's his name's movie? $1 million. Anyway, Jeremiah J. Nixon is being impeached. These 2 articles, one for that issue, and let me see, there was another one too. They added this one. They updated it after the first filing to add a second one. I'm not finding it. Okay, and I don't want to waste the time on it. The point is, our governor is getting impeached. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Thank you, Mike Moon. Thank you, Nick Marshall. Thank you, the other 7 Republicans who have signed on that bill. I don't care what party you're from. Thank you, the 7 other representatives who have signed on that bill. It is time that this guy got kicked out of here with prejudice. You know what with prejudice means in a legal format? It means without recourse. When a charge is dismissed against you with prejudice, that means they can't bring it back again, And this guy needs to be impeached and removed from office with prejudice. In other words, out in no uncertain terms. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you on your way out. Okay. There is a Second Amendment Preservation Act bill that right now is in front of the, is wending its way through the state legislature here in Missouri. And the reason that's important, and if you're not familiar with it, you should be, if you live in Missouri, is because the Second Amendment Preservation Act was one passed already, but then vetoed by this Jay Nixon last year. So they've made some changes to fix the problems with the bill, and they've resubmitted it as the new Second Amendment Preservation Act. Here's the beautiful part of this. It completely voids all federal law in the state of Missouri. So let me explain to you what that means. In the state of Missouri, this particular bill says that no federal gun laws apply, including the National Firearms Act, which prohibits the purchase and ownership of machine guns or short-barreled shotguns or suppressors or silencers, whatever you want to call them, and things like that. So it also says that any federal agent who were to come into the state of Missouri and attempt to implement any kind of a gun grab or act within the state of Missouri on federal gun laws against a Missouri resident could be arrested for a misdemeanor. And I've had, there was a lot of argument about whether it should be a misdemeanor or a felony, but the answer to that is real simple. If they go and try to seize your firearms and the value of that firearm is above $500, then it becomes a felony anyway, because now it's theft because he committed it during the institution of a misdemeanor. So now it's a felony violation. I'm all for it. The Second Amendment Preservation Act and the witness forms that are associated with that, I hope you've been filling those out. The witness form, the witness form, and I've talked to you about this before, is by Ron Calzone's organization, and you can go to libertytools.org, libertytools.org for a witness form. Now, the idea behind these witness forms is that you're actually putting your comments directly into the congressional record when you do one of these witness forms. And it's empirical proof that that was your comment. I've asked Ron if there's a way that we can actually replicate this system across the board nationally. And because Ron says it's a lot of work to do, and I'm sure it is, but I'd actually like to do it anyway. The reason I say that is because this witness form is such a powerful tool, and I'm so grateful to Ron Calzone and his group for putting this together. When you fill this out, no one can deny, first of all, it's pre-filled out for the actual bill and the bill number and all of that. So they make it, it's like foolproof for you to fill one of these out. And here's the cool part. They keep it on file. And then they send you an email every time there's a new bill that you can fill one of these out on, so you can have your input and your say. You can fill it out as an individual, or if you are a representative of an organization. Like when I fill mine out, I always fill it out as a radio host saying, I represent my audience. This is what I'm hearing from my audience. If you're the leader of a property rights organization, or a Voice of the Ozarks, or the PRC's, Property Rights Coalition, which is prcnews.org, then you can fill it out as the leader of that organization or the head representative, and so forth and so on. So the point is, these witness forms are extraordinarily valuable, because when the people who are the state senator or state representative walks into the session, he can say, this is what my constituents are asking for. I've got it here in writing, and I've got 100 or 600 or 200 or 50 or whatever the number is. Nobody can deny that. It's not anecdotal evidence. It's empirical proof. And ladies and gentlemen, that makes all the difference in the world. It also means that they know exactly how you feel. And it means that they know exactly how you, as a member of the electorate, is watching them. And that may actually even be more valuable than getting your word in the record. They can't deny that you've been active and participatory. And then when you do pick up the phone, they're going to be like, hey, this person's been filling out witness forms. I'm going to make sure I'm communicating with this person. because they're interested, they're alive, they're active, they're functional, they're an activist. Not just somebody calling up once in a great moon or once every 2 years to scream about some bill. So these witness forms are extraordinarily valuable. MoFirst.org is the website for Ron Calzone's organization. It's MoFirst.org, and I would encourage you to go over there because it's a good program that even if you're not a Missouri Missouri resident, MoFirst.org is extremely valuable in the sense that if you want to do this in your state, I want you to look at it and see how it's done, and maybe you can get Ron to help you do it. Right? These witness forms are super powerful, folks. So anyhow, here's the deal. The witness form that's out there right now is for it's called SJR, which is Senate Joint Resolution number 36. And this isn't just a statute change. It's a proposed amendment to the Missouri Constitution that will strengthen our God-given rights to self-protection. And the reason I say it's important is because what this essentially is saying is that this particular bill has, or that this particular amendment has written into it some pretty hefty language, and I can read it for you, but it's 2 pages. That the right of every citizen to keep and bear arms in defense of his home, person, family, and property, or when lawfully summoned in aid of the civil power, shall not be questioned. But this shall not justify the wearing of concealed weapons. That wording will be struck. And the new wording will be, the rights guaranteed by this section shall be unalienable. The state of Missouri shall be obligated to uphold these rights and shall under no circumstances decline to protect against their infringement. Folks, that's teeth. Let me explain to you why I say that. Remember, this is a legal document. It's a constitutional, it's a change, an amendment to the Constitution. First, they're adding in the word that you have the right to keep and bear arms in protection of in defense of your home, your person, your family, and your property. And they added the word family. Secondarily, they're removing that section that says that that this wouldn't justify the wearing of concealed weapons, because we do have concealed carry in Missouri. This is where it really gets some bite. The rights guaranteed by this section shall be unalienable. That's a powerful statement, because what it's saying is that no matter what else happens, the rights that are stated here cannot be changed by either the state or the federal government. And the reason behind that statement is so that even the state of Missouri Assembly cannot later on go in and put in a restriction that the federal government has been prohibited from putting in. Don't forget, according to Thomas Jefferson, let's forget all about good intentions, but let's bind men down with the Constitution, with the chains of the Constitution, right? Because the Constitution, folks, is not a document which grants you rights. It's a document which prohibits government. It's a prohibitive document. It's a negative document against government's intrusion beyond a certain boundary. It's a corral. Moreover, the state of Missouri shall be obligated to uphold these rights and shall under no circumstances decline to protect against their infringement. Which means now, if the federal government tries to restrict or remove or limit your Second Amendment right, the state of Missouri is required legally to defend and protect that right. Even if that means that the Attorney General for the state of Missouri has to file suit against the federal government or employ specific tactics to prohibit the federal government from making introduction of something like, let's say, the Small Arms Treaty, the United Nations Small Arms Treaty, or something like they did in the state of New York, or something like they've done in the state of Connecticut that says that they can force you to take away your right to have a number of rounds in a magazine and all that hoopla. So this is a fairly simple change, and yet it's one that is extraordinarily powerful, because what you're doing is you're actually clarifying and with an explicit phrase that says that the rights guaranteed by this section shall be unalienable, which means, and some people, by the way, would call that unalienable. I can discuss that with you at another date, and what the differences are there. But the point is, this is a change, but it's an important one. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if the federal Constitution used the word expressly where we talk about the General Welfare Clause. Right? In other words, if our General Welfare Clause said that the government could only use the General Welfare Clause for those permitted purposes that are expressly granted to them in the Constitution, we wouldn't have them using the General Welfare Clause for everything under the sun, every unconstitutional action. Wouldn't it be neat if our federal Constitution said that the federal government is prohibited expressly to the 26 enumerated powers listed, and that it is expressly prohibited from creating administrative agencies which operate extra-constitutionally outside the law? Ladies and gentlemen, we wouldn't be having. In fact, I would be blessed because I wouldn't have to do this anymore. What do you think of that? You want to get me off the air? You want to shut me up because you hate my guts and you watch because you love to hate? Great. Here's the deal. Let's bring our country back to a constitutional republic, and I'll be happy to go off the air. You can help yourself by getting me off the air by simply doing that. I know that doesn't serve your purpose, but tough. So the point is simply this. There's a whole twist to that, isn't there? The point is simply this. We want your help, and we want your help today by having you fill out a witness form. And this witness form, again, we need it today. Today's the last day for this witness form for this particular bill. So go on to our Facebook page at facebook.com/America's Voice Now and click on the links to get to it. Or go on to americasvoicenow.org, and again, it's in the latest news links. The alternative to that is you can go on to patriotfb.com, Patriot F like Foxtrot, B like Bravo, patriotfb.com, and you can do the same thing. I've got the links up there. I want you to go over there and fill out these witness forms and begin to routinely use them. If you are not a Missouri resident, I'd still like you to go to mofirst.org, because by going to mofirst.org, you will have an opportunity to see what Ron has done here and how he's created this system that enables us to have these. And honestly, if you want to do something positive in your own state to reinstate and reinstall the 10th Amendment separation and sovereignty, man, this is one of the best ways that you can do it. It really is. It really, truly is. All right. It is Friday, TGIF. I've had a tough week. I am ready for a vacation. I've never taken a vacation during the entire 2.5 or 3 years, almost 3 years now that we've been doing America's Voice Now. And I was off a week ago, but that was no vacation. I was not feeling well. And I'd love to actually have a vacation at some point. And one of the ways that you could help me do that would be by helping to support us a little bit financially, if at all possible, so that I can get some equipment we need some software and some camera equipment and things that would help us to really change the nature of the program here. And if you have the wherewithal and the ability to do that, I would be extraordinarily grateful if you can make a one-time donation or a pledged commitment, that's great. You can do that on our website by going to americasvoicenow.org. And there's a PayPal link there. Even if you don't have a PayPal account, you can do it for a one-time payment or a pledge. And you can use a credit card there. If you don't like the idea of using a credit card, you can certainly mail us a payment. You can do that by sending it to us at America's Voice Now, P.O. Box 1195 in West Plains, Missouri, 65775. And we really need some financial assistance from our listenership. I mean, we are purely a listener-supported program. We don't sell anything. We don't, have any kind of funding or support from any other groups or anything along those lines. I pay for everything out of my pocket. I hate to do the money whine, but from time to time, folks, we got to do it. And I'm sorry, but that's just the reality of it. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to do this at all. And I'd be out of a job, which would be a blessing because I could save a ton of money and I could actually sleep late. However, I never get that luxury. So if you can support us in any way, if you can support us in a larger format, or if you'd like to advertise with us, if you're a business and you think you'd like to advertise with us, you can help offset some of the cost of what it is to produce and broadcast our program. You can contact me by sending me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. And finally, and last but not least, thanks for riding with us today. Make sure that you see our friends over at Express Mini Marts 1 and 2 on 14 and 63 in Old Granny's Cafe in West Plains North, or in the southern location across the street from the People's Park at the City Pool. And make sure that you get in there and tell those people, including when you go through the drive-thru, hey, I heard about you on America's Voice Now, and I just wanted to thank you for supporting the program, and I'm here to do some business with you. Make sure you see our friends over at the battery station at 417-257-7799 or batterystation.com. Our friends at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. They are a great group of people. Their servers in there are a nice group of folks and men and women. Bruce, the manager there, just go up there and tell him, hey, Bruce, I just want to thank you for supporting AVN. Jason Henry, over at the law offices of Jason Henry, is on the square in West Plains. You can reach him by calling 417-256-4100. That's 417-256-4100. And they specialize in criminal law for both state and federal cases. If you've got a federal gun case, like a Second Amendment case, Jason handles those, both state and federal. He specializes in gun cases, especially felon in possession gun cases. He also does family law and personal injury law related to auto accidents. So you can use him in any way, shape, or form. 417-256-4100. Make sure that you also see our friends over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco. They are a great little shop there where they've got cigars and tobacco and pipes and every accessory you could imagine if you're a smoker. If your husband from time to time or your boyfriend likes to have a cigar, you can slip in there. It's a great gift idea, a great gift item. If they smoke them routinely, they've got all kinds of things in there like humidors and accessories and tampers and cutters and clippers and every other doggone thing you could want for smoking. So tobacco little pouches, these nice leather bags and all kinds of stuff. Little pocket humidors, gigantic desk ones. I mean, the humidor is so big you could, hide the cat in there. So anyway, swing in and see the folks over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco, and they ship. 417-257-1776. You can find them on Facebook by going to facebook.com/Patriot Cigar and Tobacco. Also, Wits End Classic Barbershop, and you can find them by going to facebook.com/Wits End Classic Barbershop. And hit like on their pages, folks, and do them a favor, even if you're not local. And in addition to that, make sure that you get your hair cut by Jason from Wits End Classic Barbershop. He's a good buddy of mine, and he cuts my hair and does a phenomenal job every week. If you're in need of a new website or marketing or advertising for your business or business consulting, please feel free to give us some contact at airbridgeweb.com. That's airbridgeweb.com. You can get there. It's like air like you breathe, bridge like you drive over, and web, W-E-B, like the internet. Interwebs. And you can see some examples of some of the websites that we've built for different various customers over there, e-learning programs that we do, and some marketing and creation of collateral and print stuff. We also do business consulting, and I'd be happy to help you out there. airbridgeweb.com. Have a great day. God bless you all. We'll see you on Monday.